Today we're going to talk about making inferences. So an inference is basically like a guess that you can make. So a guess that you make based on what you already know. So the first thing we're looking at is evidence. So evidence is the stuff that you're reading in the text. It's the information that you are given. So evidence is info from the book. So information from your book is the evidence. Background knowledge is what you already know. So what you already know. An inference is when you take these two things, evidence and background knowledge, and combine them together. So evidence is, once again, from the book. Background knowledge is from you. So what's in it for me? When you were younger, you probably went through a why phase. Put on your shoes. Why? Share your toys. Why? Don't pull the dog's tail. Why? Eventually, you grew out of this as you learned more about the world and got better at figuring it out for yourself. So if someone said, put on your shoes, you would already think, I need to put on shoes because it's raining outside, so I don't want to get my feet wet. Someone didn't have to tell you that because you had background knowledge. You knew that you had to put on shoes because of the weather. Don't pull a dog's tail. You knew that if you pulled a dog's tail, that the dog would be upset. Now you make inferences all the time without even realizing it. If what you see or hear doesn't make sense right away, your brain connects what's going on with what you know from experience until, oh, I get it. It's the same when you read. The only catch is that some readers forget to ask themselves why or what's going on when something doesn't make sense. Don't fall into that trap. Put your inference powers to use. Okay, so we're going to practice now. Read the statements, then match the statement with the correct person. As you work, think about the evidence provided and your background knowledge. Open wide. Uh-oh, I can see 2 cavities. You should be brushing your teeth twice a day. So the key word here is teeth. So think over here. Who deals with teeth? A math teacher, an actress, a doctor, or a dentist? Yep, so the correct answer is dentist. Hopefully you picked that one. Next, the x-ray shows that your arm is broken in 2 places. What color cast would you like? So who is going to talk to you about your arm is broken? Your arm is broken. Is that a math teacher, an actress, or a doctor? Right, a doctor. Next, okay, class, please take out your math books and open to page 43. Here we see the word math books. So who would deal with math books, a math teacher or an actress? Right, a math teacher. Finally, I'm so nervous about auditioning for this movie. I hope I get the lead. So we have movie, and our last one is an actress. So let's take a look for a second to see what this has to do with inferencing. So the first one, we are getting the information from the book. We'll say this is a book. Teeth, right? I already know that someone who deals with teeth is a dentist. So my inference is that this is a dentist that's saying this. That is my inference. No one is telling me that this is the dentist, right? I know because based on my background knowledge, I've been to a dentist to get my teeth checked. I wouldn't go to the dentist to get my arm checked. So the dentist, my background knowledge of dentist is dentist equals teeth. Here I see the word teeth. This is my evidence. So my inference is that it's a dentist. Okay, read the story, then read each piece of evidence. Fill in your background knowledge about the evidence and circle the correct inference. Carson looked over the menu at the diner, hung his head, and sighed. Ever since the factory closed, he had been looking for work. He made himself put on a suit and apply for at least one job every day. I just need to keep trying, he thought. The waitress who took his order looked tired. Carson heard her talking to the cook about her son. The boy needed school supplies, but she couldn't afford them. Carson smiled and said, "Times are tough." She nodded in agreement and thought this over while Carson finished his breakfast. He placed $3 on the counter for the meal. His wallet was empty except for a $20 bill. Carson had been saving it for an emergency, but he took it out and left her a $20 tip. He was at the door when the waitress came running after him. "Thank you," she said. There were tears in her eyes. As Carson continued down the street, he held his head a bit higher as he thought about the future. Okay, the evidence in the text tells me, so the evidence that we're looking at is he hung his head and sighed. My background knowledge tells me. So now I need to think. If I see someone hanging their head and sighing, so like, what does that tell me? What does that usually mean? So for me, if I see someone hang their head and sigh, it usually tells me that they are sad, right? So if someone is hanging their head and sighing, it means that they're sad. So I can infer, I can make a guess that Carson is he depressed, meaning sad, or is he happy? He is depressed. I just need to keep trying. Sentence 4. So if I think about this, I just need to keep trying, he thought. Does this sound like someone, what does this sound like to you? So if I need to keep trying, he doesn't want, I'm gonna run out of room here, to give up. He doesn't want to give up. So if he doesn't want to give up, is he lazy or is he persistent? He is persistent. Left her a $20 tip. So if somebody leaves a lot of money, what does that tell you about them? What do you know already about someone who leaves a lot of money? Right, so he is nice. He seems like a nice guy. So if he's a nice guy, he's leaving a lot of money. Does that mean he is cheap or generous? That means he is generous. He wants to give a lot. He held his head a bit higher. Okay, so if someone, so at the beginning here, we saw that he hung his head low, right? So here, he's sad. Now, he's walking around kind of like, my eyeballs are off. So now he's happy, right? His head is up. Oh my goodness, those eyes. Can't see, whatever. Ignore that. Try that again. Right, so his head is high now. He is happier. So if he is happy, is he optimistic or is he sad? He is optimistic. Okay, read the story, then use the terms in the box to complete the graphic organizers below. It was only 8 o'clock, hours earlier than Rick's usual bedtime, but Rick lay in bed, shivering under blankets and a quilt. He wore a woolen hat and gloves. It was too dark to read. He couldn't listen to music because his phone and computer weren't charged. With nothing to do, he drifted off to sleep. He was dreaming about playing volleyball on the beach under a broiling sun when he suddenly woke up. Light filled the room. The bedside and desk lamps burned brightly. Warm air blew from the heating vent. Rick leaped out of bed and ran into the kitchen, where the refrigerator hummed and the clock on the stove flashed. Yes, he shouted, it's back. Okay, so the evidence in section 1 tells me, the evidence in section 2 tells me, my background knowledge tells me, so I can infer that, and I can infer that. Okay, so section 1 is this part up here. Section 2 is this part here. Okay, so now we need to look at our different options. We have the lights are out earlier than normal. The lights turn on in the middle of the night. Rick's power has gone out. Heat and light turn on with power. Rick's power is back on. Lights, phones, and computers need power. Okay, so the first thing that I need to do is figure out what the evidence from section 1 is. So I'm going to read it again. It was only 8 o'clock, hours earlier than Rick's usual bedtime, but Rick lay in bed shivering under 2 blankets and a quilt. He wore a woolen hat and gloves. It was too dark to read. He couldn't listen to music because his phone and computer weren't charged. With nothing to do, he drifted off to sleep. So looking at my different options here, the only one that happens here that I can see is that it was too dark to read. And then we see here, the lights are out earlier than normal. So this is going to go down here. Okay, so if the lights are out earlier than normal, what do I know about lights? Do I know that they turn on in the middle of the night? Do I know that they turn on with power? Or do I know that they need power? Right, so I know that lights, phones, and computers need power. So this would go down here, right? So this is what I already know. Therefore, so I know the evidence tells me that lights are out earlier than normal. I know that lights, phones, and powers need computer. So if I put these two together, what can I figure out? What can I infer? What can I guess? Yes, so I can guess, I can infer that his power has gone out. If he doesn't have any of this stuff, it's because his power has gone out. Okay, so that goes over there. Change the color. Okay, so now evidence in section 2. He was dreaming about playing volleyball on the beach under a broiling sun when he suddenly woke up. Light filled the room. The bedside and desk lamps burned brightly. Warm air blew from the heating vent. Rick leaped out of bed and ran into the kitchen, where the refrigerator hummed and the clock on the stove flashed. Yes, he shouted, it's back. Okay, so evidence, what do we see? Did the lights turn on in the middle of the night? Did the heat and light turn on with power? Or was his power back on? So here we can see light filled the room. So we know that the answer for this first one, for the evidence, is this, right? So his lights turned on. Now, what do I already know about heat and light? Well, we already said that lights and phones need power, right? So what makes more sense for my background knowledge? That heat and light turn on with power, or that his power is back on? Heat and light turn on with power. So this is going to be my background knowledge. So that means if the evidence tells me that the lights turn on in the middle of the night, and I know that heat and light turn on with power, what does that mean about Rick? It means that his power is back on. Okay, an idiom is a phrase that means something different from its literal meaning. So if you tried to translate this into Spanish, it would not make sense. Read each of the idioms below. Then use the background knowledge provided and the phrases in the box to infer the meaning of each idiom. Okay, so the first one, walking on thin ice. I know that thin ice is dangerous, right? So if I say someone is walking on thin ice, it doesn't mean that they are literally on hielo, right? They're not caminando en hielo. No, that's not what they're doing. But I know that thin ice is dangerous. So what does that mean? Does it mean that they are out of place, that they missed an opportunity, that they're feeling nervous, that they are in trouble, or that they are a small part of a big problem? Well, if thin ice is dangerous, then that person is probably in trouble. Okay, next, butterflies in my stomach. Okay, so butterflies are mariposas in your stomach. I think it's just estomaco, something like that. So if I have butterflies in my stomach, it doesn't mean that I literally have mariposas in my stomach, right? But what I already know, my background knowledge, is that if people are nervous, their stomachs may feel fluttery. So they kind of feel like sick, and they don't feel good. So which of these makes more sense? Out of place, miss an opportunity, feeling nervous, or a small part of a big problem? Right, this would be feeling nervous. Okay, tip of the iceberg. So an iceberg is this thing here. Okay, so if we say the tip of the iceberg, it's this top of it, top part up here. But if you look, all of this in the iceberg is underwater. Okay, so if we think about an iceberg, most of the iceberg is hidden underwater. So what makes more sense? That it's out of place, that you miss an opportunity, or it's a small part of a big problem? So this is a small part of a big problem, which I'm just going to write small part. Because if we look at this iceberg, and if I said that I was hungry, that would be my little problem, right? Hungry. But maybe the whole big problem is that I don't have any money to buy food. That's why I'm hungry, right? So I'm hungry is the small part. I don't have money is the whole big problem. Okay, miss the boat. Miss the boat. So people can't get on a boat once it sails away, right? So once a boat is gone, it's gone. So which of these makes more sense? Out of place, miss an opportunity. Oops. Out of place or miss an opportunity? Yeah, so this one we can actually see miss, right? So miss opportunity. Okay, the last one, we know that the answer is out of place, but let's just take a look at it. A fish out of water. So if I said that the kid was a fish out of water once he went to college, that doesn't really make sense, but I can think, well, fish can't survive out of water. So is that a place where fish should be? No, probably not. So they are out of place. It's not where they belong. So you might feel like a fish out of water when you're somewhere that you're not used to being. Excuse me. Okay, that's it. Great job.